Hey guys, sup? Welcome back. I'm your host, Carlos Phoenix here, bringing you guys some more Magic the Gathering online content, and today I'm going to be debuting my Athreos God of Passage deck to you guys. Athreos God of Passage is a 5/4 legendary enchantment creature god for 1, a white, and a black. It has indestructible. It is not counted as a creature unless your devotion to white and black is at least 7 or higher. And when another creature that you own dies, you can return it to your hand unless you have target opponent pay 3 life. Now, two interesting things to note about both this commander and the Theros God in general is first off, the fact that as a dual color Theros God, when you play it, assuming it does not automatically come down as a creature, it enters the battlefield as an enchantment. The very next turn, if it becomes animated as a creature, you can actually attack with it, or any turn that it becomes a creature, provided it has spent at least one turn on the battlefield as a regular enchantment. Well, a legendary enchantment, but, all the same. And additionally, this is specific to Athreos, is you want to pay very specific attention to the wording on the cards, because in card games, the wording on cards are very important, and even just a single word being changed completely recontextualizes a card. Look no further than Cyclonic Rift, replacing target with each, and it's suddenly a blue staple that goes in every commander deck that runs it, And Athreos is no different because it says specifically that you own dies. So if we're playing up against Terragrid, or for some reason someone uses a reanimation spell on one of my creatures, even though they control it, since I own it, when it dies, I still get the Athreos trigger. And of course, you can do some politicking to maybe make a deal with someone, say, hey, I will let you do something in exchange if you perhaps let me get this value creature back, like one of the sacrifice creatures on ETB, like Plaguecrafter, Flashback Marauder, etc. And and other than that, we're just going to be having a grand time in general. And let me go ahead and type in my good luck have fun message. It looks like we did lose the die roll, so we're waiting for Mr. Fridge to choose whether he wants to play first or not. We're going to see Mr. Fridge play Tatiova Benthic Druid, Popeye on Spinach playing Niv Perun, and Dax Maximus playing Child of Alara. This hand is okay, except we don't have a source of black, so we're going to go ahead and mulligan it. And this hand is sadly not much better, even though we do have both our sources of black. This is a pretty unique EDH deck in that most, yeah. Anyway, in that most EDH decks are actually built around the commander itself, whereas we are built around one of the cards in the 99, which is Shadowborn Apostle, which is a 1/1 human cleric for a single black mana that you can have any number of in your deck. So already we're getting around the deck building 100 card singleton deck building restriction. And then you can pay a black and sacrifice 6 of them to search your library for any demon creature card and put it directly onto the battlefield. You don't got to put it on top of your library. It doesn't go in your hand. You don't got to pay its casting cost. It just goes straight onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. So that's amazing. And that combos very well, or I guess I should say synergizes very well with Athreos, because when you sacrifice 6 of them, you then get 6 Athreos triggers if it's out, even as just an enchantment, which means that someone's either going to pay 18 life or let you get your cards back. We are going to keep this this third hand, I should say rather, of 6, putting back the Harvester of Souls, and then we're going to put on a possible play yield on, and we'll see Mr. Fridge play an island as his land for turn and tap it for a ponder, allowing him to look at the top 3 cards of his library and put them back in any order, and he may then choose to shuffle his library. He chose not to, so he will then draw a card, pass the turn to Popeye on Spinach, who will play a island as his land for turn and pass over to Dax Maximus, who will play a mountain as his land for turn and pass. We're going to go ahead and play, we're going to draw into a Plains and play another Plains we already had in our hand before that as our land for turn, and go ahead and pass. I just like playing my lands in rubric order, which is why we did it in that specific order, and we're going to go ahead and pass the turn over to Mr. Fridge again, who will play a forest as his land for turn, and tap both his lands for a Sakura Tribe Elder. Good old Steve, which is a 1/1 Snake Shaman for 1 in the green that he can sacrifice at any time to search his library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle his library. People usually wait until they use that as a blocker because that not only prevents the combat damage that they would have taken, but also lets them still get the effect off. Gonna get a forest and pass turn after sacrificing the Sakura Tribe Elder through its own effect. We're going to then see Popeye on Spinach, draw, and play Sulphur Falls as his land for turn, which is a non-basic land that enters the battlefield tapped unless he controls an island or mountain, and can tap for either a red or blue mana. He will then tap both his lands for a Spellskite Mama, which is a 0/4 artifact creature horror that he can pay a Phyrexian blue to change the target spell or ability to Spellskite itself, so a great protection card, and pass turn over to Dax Maximus, who will play Drowned Catacomb, which will enter the battlefield tapped since he doesn't control an island or swamp, but can tap for a blue and black or black mana. Well, I guess it's say blue or black mana, not blue and black, and then pass the turn over to me. I'm going to draw into a Rakshasa Debaser, which kind of sucks for us, but that's fine. We're going to play a Swamp as our land for turn and tap it for a Shadowborn Apostle, which I have already gone over. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and quickly hop over to the settings real fast so I can get my preview pane up. And we'll switch back here and we will pass the turn. So yeah, some very beautiful lands here from Mr. Fridge. And then we're going to go ahead and yield to the turn. I do want to keep the white open just so that we can maybe bluff having a removal spell. But we're going to see Mr. Fridge play an island as his land for turn and tap both a forest and island for Curious Follower, which is a 2/2 merfolk for a blue and green that can tap to untap another target permanent, which surprisingly enough doesn't even have to be one he controls, which is funny. We're going to see him pass turn after that. We'll see Popeye and Spinach play Mountain as his land for turn and tap out for a Rhystic Study, which is an enchantment for 2 and a blue, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, he may draw a card unless that player pays 1. We're going to see that get met with a Delay, which is an instant for 1 and a blue that counters target spell, and if it's countered this way, it gets exiled with 3 time counters on it instead of being put into the graveyard, and it gains Suspend if it doesn't already have it, which means that at the beginning of its owner's upkeep, a time counter is removed from it, and when the last is removed, it gets played without paying its mana cost, and if it's a creature that has haste. So, Rhystic Study will get exiled with 3 time counters on it. Passing turn over to Dax Maximus, we will see, and the Delay, of course, was cast by Mr. Fridge, and play Rootbound Crag as his land for turn, a foil one, in fact, which is a non-basic land that enters the battlefield tapped unless it controls a mountain or forest, and can tap for either a red or green mana. We're then going to see him tap out for an Energy Flux, which is an enchantment for 2 and a blue that makes all artifacts have additional text reading. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 2 generic mana for each one that you control, meaning he's going to have to pay to keep Spellskite around or get rid of it. We will draw into, he'll pass turn at that, we'll draw into a No Mercy. We'll play a Plains as our land for turn, and tap our, no, I'll tell you what, let's actually go ahead and tap out for our Commander, which we will cast after I got a passage from the command zone, which I have already previewed for you guys. So we'll go ahead and cast that, proceed to combat, and swing our Shadowborn Apostle at Dax Maximus, just to really make sure we're utilizing every move we can make as efficiently as possible. And he'll take 1 because he doesn't have any blockers, going from 40 down to 39. we will pass the turn. And does this have... It does have Encore. Interesting. Okay. We'll see Mr. Fridge begin his turn and play a Bosiju, who shelters all, which is a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped, and he can tap it and pay 2 life to add a colorless mana to his mana pool, and if it's spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, that spell can't be countered. We will then see him tap the rest of his lands and tap his Kiora's follower to untap the island, which he will then retap to cast his commander Tetiova Benthic Druid, which is a 3/3 legendary merfolk druid for 3, a green, and a blue, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under his control, he gains a life and draws a card, which unfortunately he didn't get to use the benefit of this turn due to having to play the land tapped, but oh well. Yeah, he realized he messed up. On Popeye Spinach's upkeep, there will be a trigger on the Spellskite, choosing not to pay it so it'll get sacrificed, and then a time counter will be removed from Mystic Study, meaning that it only has 2 counters now. And we're going to see him simply pass turn over to Dax Maximus, who will play a Cascading Cataracts as his land for turn, which has Indestructible. I didn't even realize it had that. Can tap for a colorless, and he can pay 5 and tap to add 5 mana and then a combination of colors, which is a very powerful effect here. Great in Golos, Joda, etc. And simply will pass the turn after that. To me, I will draw it into a Demon's Disciple. Sucks that we did miss our 4th land drop there. We're going to simply go ahead and tap our Swamp for a Shadowborn Apostle, and we will proceed to combat and have our other Shadowborn Apostle attack Popeye on Spinach for 1. With no blockers, he will be forced to take it, going from 40 down to 39, and then we will pass the turn. On my M step, we are going to see Popeye and Spinach Pongify Mr. Fridge's Commander, which is an instant for a single blue mana that destroys target creature without the possibility of regeneration, and its controller will generate a 3/3 green 8 creature token, getting rid of Mr. Fridge's Commander and generating a monkey for him. He will, of course, choose to put Tatiova back in the command zone, and we will see him tap all his lands, tap his Kira's follower, and tap to untap the island and tap it again. For a Consecrated Sphinx, I knew that was coming, which is a 4/6 flying Sphinx for 4 in double blue, and whenever an opponent draws a card, he can draw 2 cards. We are going to see Popeye on Spinach Reality Shifted, which is an instant for 1 in a blue, exiling target creature, and its controller manifests the top card of their library, meaning they put the top card of their library onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, and if it's a creature card, it can be turned face up at any time for its morph cost. That is incredible. Full of answers here. We're going to see Mr. Fridge swing the ape at Popeye on Spinach to try to get some revenge there. He has no blockers, so he will take it going from 39 down to 36, and he will pass the turn. What an incredible turn for Popeye on Spinach there. At Popeye on Spinach's upkeep, we will see him get an upkeep trigger from Mystic Study, removing another time counter, so it will come down next turn. If I am not mistaken here, yes, that is correct. We're going to see him seemingly missing a land drop initially, tapping his island for a Ponder, which is a sorcery for a single blue mana, allowing him to look at the top 3 cards of his library and put them back in any order. He may then choose to shuffle his library, and he will then draw a card. I do much prefer the current artwork that he's running to the one from War 1 that was originally depicted, just personally. But anyway, we are going to see him hit his land drop, which is a mountain for his land for turn. And I believe we'll just see him pass turn here. Yes, we will. Coming back over to Dax Maximus here. You're going to see him play a Mana Confluence as his land for turn, which he can tap and pay a life to add a mana of any color to his mana pool. He will start tapping down some of his lands and cast a Rough, which is a sorcery for 1 in a red that deals 2 damage to each creature without flying, which will kill the Kiora's follower and the Manifest, which is a Royal Elemental, which is a very powerful creature. Deal 2 damage to the ape, and it will also kill both of my Shadowborn Apostles. I'll get 2 Athreos triggers, and I will point them both at Popeye and Spinach. So now he will either have to pay 6 life, or give me my Shadowborn Apostles back. He's choosing to pay 3 life for both of them, going from 36 down to 33, and 33 down to 30, to prevent me from getting them back to my hand, which is interesting. Very interesting indeed. And then he will pass the turn after that. Coming back to my turn, I'm going to draw into hopefully a land here. It is not going to be anything of such luck. We get a Rite of Bells Unlock. So we're simply going to tap down our swamp for a Shadowborn Apostle and pass the turn. Really needing our next land drop here. I do believe I'm running, 37 lands in the deck, so I don't know. Passing turn over to Mr. Fridge here. We're going to see him play a Mystic Sanctuary as his land for turn, which is an island that enters the battlefield tapped unless it controls 3 or more other islands. Unfortunately, only has 2 others. And when it enters the battlefield untapped, he may put target instant or sorcery card from his graveyard on top of his library. As I said, unfortunately, entering tapped here, so it won't be able to trigger. And he's just going to go ahead and proceed straight to combat, and presumably swing his ape at Popeye on Spinach to really show him that you don't mess with his lands. No, he is, I'm not lands, his, um, his creatures rather. We're gonna see him swing the ape at Dax Maximus, which he will have to take as he has no blockers. Going from 39 down to 36, he will pass the turn. Over to Popeye and Spinach here, who will remove the last counter from Rhystic Study and be able to cast it without paying its mana cost here now, which is some very delayed, if you'll pardon the pun, card draw here. We're then going to see him cast a Jeweled Lotus, which is an artifact that he can cast for free and tap it and sacrifice it to add 3 mana of any one color. However, it can be spent only to cast his commander, which I don't believe he will have any problem with whatsoever. He will tap and sacrifice a Jeweled Lotus for triple blue, and then he will presumably tap his Sulphur Falls for red, as well as both his mountains to cast Niv Mizzet Parun, which is a 5/5 legendary dragon wizard for triple blue and triple red that can't be countered, has flying. Whenever he draws a card, Niv Mizzet Parun deals 1 damage to any target, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, he will draw a card. He will then enchant his Niv Mizzet Parun with Curiosity, which is an infinite combo with him. We're going to see Dax Maximus potentially counter it with a Struggle. Struggle will deal damage to target creature equal to the number of lands he controls. It's an instant for 2 in a red. We are going to see him struggle the Niv Mizzet Parun. However, that will trigger Niv Mizzet Parun since it is an instant or sorcery spell. that will allow Popeye on Spinach to draw a card and ping someone or something for run 1. In addition, Popeye on Spinach has a Rhystic Study trigger that Dax Maximus cannot pay for, so he will get to draw a card. He's going to ping my Shadowborn Apostle with his Niv Mizzet Parun. That will trigger my Athreos, and I will point it at Popeye on Spinach here. However, the Niv Mizzet will die before the Curiosity does get to get enchanted onto it, rather, if you'll excuse me for that, sorry. Popeye on Spinach is going to choose to let the Shadowborn Apostle come back. And now we are going to see Niv Mizzet Parun deal damage to Dax Maximus, taking him down from 35 to 34. The struggle will kill the Niv Mizzet Parun, so we are going to see him. Oh no, we are going to see him cast Deflecting Swat, which is an instant for 2 and a red. And if he controls a commander, he can cast it without paying its mana cost, and he can counter target spell. He may choose new targets for a target spell or ability. He's going to struggle to ape. Curiosity will resolve now, enchanting onto the Niv Mizzet Parun, potentially going infinite, although we won't have to worry about it as we do have a Demon's Disciple in hand. Which is very fortunate for us, because if we did not have that, this game would be over next turn. We're then going to see Dax Maximus begin his turn by tapping some of his lands. He will lose a life off the mana confluence, going from 33 down to 32. We'll see him cast a Tear, which is an instant for a single white that destroys target enchantment. That will trigger both Niv Mizzet Parun and Rhystic Study. Niv Mizzet Parun will trigger and allow him to draw a card, which he will then use to deal damage to Dax Maximus. That will trigger Curiosity, and the game is effectively over now. We are going to see Popeye and Spinach very gracefully concede here so that we can continue to play our game. And that will make it Dax Maximus's turn, finally able to continue. We'll see him cast a Spring, which is a sorcery for 200 grain. Lets him search his library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle his library. Very beautiful looking artwork. We're going to see him fetch a Plains here, it looks like. And Popeye and Spinach now watching. Of course, the Tear will be removed from the stack, as there is no legal targets for it to actually destroy. Passing turn over to me, I'm going to draw it into a Shadowborn Apostle. Feels bad, man. We're going to go ahead and tap a Swamp to cast another one we already had in our hand before that, thanks to Spinach, and we will simply pass the turn to Mr. Fridge. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go get myself a drink because my throat is running rather dry at this point. Much, much better. We're going to then see him tap 3 of his lands for a Chasm Skulker, which is a 1/1 Squid Horror for 2 and a blue. that lets him put a +1/+1 counter on it whenever he draws a card. And whenever Chasm Skulker dies, he'll create an X1/1 blue 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Chasm Skulker. We'll also see him cast Kodama's Reach, which is a sorcery, arcane sorcery, I should say rather, for 2 and a green. Lets him search the library for 2 basic land cards, reveal them, put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into his hand. He will put a forest he will put an island onto the battlefield tap and play a forest as his land for turn. Pass and turn over to Dax Maximus. And we will see him cast a Spellbound Dragon, which is a very cool card name. It is a 3/5 dragon for 3, a blue, and a red. It has flying, and whenever Spellbound Dragon attacks, he draws a card and discards a card, and it gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the discarded card's mana cost. A King and Jund, a Surf and Esper. Very nice. We're going to obviously pass priority, as we can't do anything to deal with that quite yet. However, we do want to get rid of that Chasm Skulker right now, so that we don't have to deal with any annoying tokens. We'll go ahead and tap both our plains and our swamp, floating double white and a black to cast Demon's Disciple, which is a 3/1 human cleric for 2 and a black. And when it enters the battlefield, each player will sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. I will go ahead and sacrifice my Demon's Disciple. No, actually, I'll sacrifice my Shadowborn Apostle. Mr. Fridge will have to sacrifice his Chasm Skulker, and Dax Maximus will have to sacrifice his Spellbound Dragon. Chasm Skulker will trigger, as well as Athreos, but Chasm Skulker won't create any tokens. We'll point the Athreos at Dax Maximus, seeing if he wants to pay 3 life, or allow us to get the Shadowborn Apostle back. He's going to choose to pay the 3 life, going from 31 down to 28, and we will pass the turn after that. Really struggling to find a land here. Gonna see him tap most of his lands for a Tattoo of a Benthic Druid with Commander Tax, which is now a 7 CMC 3/3. He will, however, play nothing else, as a matter of fact. My apologies. He'll pass turn over to Dax Maximus. We'll tap his mana confluence for a white, paying a life, going from 28 down to 27. We'll see him cast a Dusk, which is a sorcerer for 2 and double white that destroys all creatures with 3 or more power, 3 or greater power, meaning Tatiova will get destroyed again. My Athreos will trigger, and I will point it at Dax Maximus, so he will presumably pay 3 life. If he's going to pay 3 life for a Shadowborn Apostle, he will certainly pay 3 life for a Demon's Disciple, going from 27 down to 24, and pass the turn. Fridge, very aggravated at the situation, choosing to put it back in the command zone. We will draw into a Ravenous Demon, tap our swamp for a black to cast another Shadowborn Apostle, and pass the turn. And we'll pass the turn. Mr. Fridge, of course, choosing to put Tatiova back in the command zone, which is now very, very expensive. It is now a 9 mana 3/3. And he's simply just going to pass the turn, it looks like. He is simply saying, I am out of this loop, man. I cannot handle this. Probably holding up a slew of counter spells if he's passing turn with all that mana open. And we're just going to see Dax Maximus pass as well. What is going on here? We are going to draw into our land. Finally, we will play the swamp we drew as our land for turn. And we do want to be a little cautious here because I am afraid Mr. Fridge is holding up some form of counter magic. But we, at the same time, can't really afford to play around it. So I think what we will do... Let's actually tap both our plains as well as both our swamps for a Rite of Belzenlock, which is an enchantment saga for 2 and double black, which creates 2/0/1 black cleric creature tokens for the first 2 turns, and then on the third and final turn for the chapter 3 it creates a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying and trample, and at the beginning of our upkeep we must sacrifice another creature, and if I can't it will deal 6 damage to me. This is really the only way I can play around it. It looks like he is going to choose to counter this, which is a little curious to me, but okay. He's going to lose 2 life off of Boseiju, going from 36 down to 34. Mystic Confluence. Sublime Epiphany, which is an instant for 4 in double blue that allows him to choose one or more. He will counter the Rite of Belzenlock and return target online permanent to its owner's hand. Returning my after to my hand, and it looks like he will also draw a card. Yep, and then that will be that. Not gonna lie, kind of surprised he wanted to use the counterspell on Rite of Belzenlock, but I'm glad we did sort of play around it with the No Mercy. We will then have our Shadowborn Apostle attack Mr. Fridge, who will go from 34 down to 33 with no blockers, and we will pass the turn. We're going to see Mr. Fridge cast a Growing Rites of Unlock, which is a legendary enchantment for 2 and a green, and when it enters the battlefield, he'll look at the top 4 cards of his library and reveal a creature card from among them and put it into his hand. The rest will go on the bottom of his library in any order, and at the beginning of his end step, if he controls 4 more creatures, he can transform Growing Rites of Unlock into Unlock Cradle of the Sun, which is a legendary land that can either tap for a green or tap to add a green to his mana pool for each creature he controls. He is going to then reveal a Woodfall Primus, which is a 6/6 Treefolk Shaman for 5 in triple green with trample. When it enters the battlefield, he can destroy target non-creature permanent, and it has persist. He will then cast a Reclamation Sage, which is a 2/1 Elf Shaman for 2 and a green, and when it enters the battlefield, he may destroy target artifact or enchantment, choosing to get rid of the Energy Flux. Receiving Dax Maximus cast a Consign, which is an instant for 1 in a blue, returning target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. He is going to return the Energy Flux to his hand, preventing the Reclamation Sage from destroying it. The ability will get removed from his deck / countered since it has no legal targets. So a very smart play from Dax Maximus here. and then he'll pass turn. We're going to see Dax Maximus play a forest as his land for turn, and begin to tap some of his lands, presumably to recast his energy flux, which is exactly what he's going to do. We'll then also see him cast a Survive, which is a sorcery for 1 and a green. That, let me actually go ahead and read this here. It is a Aftermath card which can be cast only from his graveyard and then gets exiled, shuffling, and each player will shuffle their graveyard into their library, which is very nice. I will draw for turn into a Shadowborn Apostle, and I'm going to just simply tap out to cast a No Mercy. Actually, you know what? No. I will still tap out. I will cast a Shadowborn Apostle, and I will also cast Athreos, God of Passage, from my hand, without having to pay commander tax because it is in my hand, of course. That will resolve, and we will have our Shadowborn Apostle go after Mr. Fridge again during our combat step. I'm assuming he's going to choose to take it. Going from 33 down to 32, we will pass the turn. We're going to see him tap out, paying 2 life with Bosiju, going from 32 down to 30. Is he going to do it? He's going to cast the Woodfall Primus, which will trigger its ETB and allow him to destroy target non-creature permanent, which means it can hit lands. He's going to destroy the energy flux. And Persist, of course, is going to allow him to return it to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it when it dies. If it didn't have one already, he will then swing the Reclamation Sage at Dax Maximus during his combat step, going from 24 down to 22 since he has no blockers. And we will see him pass the turn from there. We're going to see Dax Maximus just completely pass turn back to us. We will go ahead and tap out for a No Mercy, as Mr. Fridge is currently tapped out, which is an enchantment for 2 and double black, and whenever a creature deals damage to us, it gets destroyed. Very short, sweet, and to the point. We will then have both of our Shadowborn Apostles attack Dax Maximus for 2 points of damage, which will, of course, go through since he has no blockers. He will go from 22 down to 20, and we will pass the turn. We're going to see Mr. Fridge cast a Birds of Paradise, which is a 0/1 bird with flying. For a single green mana, he can tap to add a mana of any color, meaning he will be able to cast Tatiova next turn if he so desires. We are going to additionally see him tap his Bosiju, losing 2 life, going from 30 down to 28. He will cast a Finale of Revelation, which is a spell for X in double blue that lets him draw X cards, and if X is 10 or more, instead shuffle his graveyard into his library, draw X card, untap up to 5 lands, and he has no maximum hand size for the rest of the game, getting exiled afterwards. X is 5, so he will draw 5 cards, play a forest from his hand as his land for turn, tap it for a mana, and then proceed to his combat step. We are then going to see him swing the Woodfall Primus and Reclamation Shades at Dax Maximus during his combat. Oh, is this what I think it is? Settle the wreckage? It is Order, which is an instant for 3 and a white that exiles target attacking creature. So Woodfall Primus will be exiled, which gets around it perfectly. We are then going to see him cycle a Sheltered Thicket, which he will then pay 2 and discard to allow him to draw a card. He'll take 2, going from 20 down to 18. And during his cleanup step, he'll have to discard a card due to hand size. That Order being a very, very nice card here, as it is going to get around his Persist, and we will see him discard a Chain of Vapor, which is a very possibly annoying card, and we will see Dax Maximus play an island as his land for turn. Very nice Theros Constellation lands. It looks like we are going to see him cast a Child of Alara on turn 12, which is a 6/6 legendary avatar for Wooburg, a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green with trample. And when Child of Alara dies, it destroys all non-land permanents with it, and they cannot be regenerated. He will pass turn after that. I will draw into my Shadowborn Apostle, and I'm going to tap both of my swamps for 2 more Shadowborn Apostles. That will be just enough devotion to make Athreos, that will be just enough devotion to make Athreos a creature. Well, I mean, actually, it's 1 over, but anyway. Very nice. We will then proceed to combat. And actually, no, I believe we'll just go ahead and pass turn after that. Passing turn over to Mr. Fridge now. We're going to see him tap all 3 of his islands. No, 2, nope. Not any of them, as a matter of fact. Tapping some of his lands. His Birds of Paradise. He will tap his Besiju, going from 28 down to 26. You'll then see him cast a Mana Reflection, which is an enchantment for 4 and double green, and whenever he taps a permanent for mana, it produces twice as much of that mana instead. So now he does have a mana doubler out, tapping the rest of his lands for 4 blue and 4 green. We're going to see him cast Frantic Surge, which is an instant for 2 and a blue that lets him draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and untap up to 3 lands. Which means we will see him play his Tatyova now. Or at least so I can assume. We're going to see him discard a Regrowth, and I'm not sure what else he discarded there. Oh yeah, Kyora's follower. Duh. We'll see him cast a Garruk Wild Speaker, which is a 3 loyalty planeswalker for 2 and double green that has a +1 that allows him to untap 2 target lands. It can -1 to create a 3/3 green beast creature token, and it can -4 as an ult to give creatures he controls +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. He will uptick his Garruk to 4, untapping 2 of his lands, and now we may just possibly see him cast his commander for 9 mana. No, he will cast a Time Stretch, which is a sorcery for 8 in double blue. That lets him take 2 extra turns after this one. Dax Maximus just gonna concede here. Not a fan whatsoever of this solitaire shenanigans. We're going to see him pass a turn to himself on his first extra turn. We'll see him play an island as his land for turn, which I feel he should have held off on because he could have cast his commander. We're going to see him cast a Thassa, God of the Sea, which is a 5/5 legendary enchantment creature god for 2 and a blue with indestructible. It is not creature unless his devotion to blue is 5 or greater. At the beginning of his upkeep, he can scry 1 and he can pay 1 a blue to prevent target creature from being blocked at this turn. See Mr. Fridge tapping down some extra lands. We're going to see him cast his commander, Tatioa Benthic Druid, for 9 mana. Tapping down almost all the rest of his lands for a pretty heavy spell. It looks like a Progenitor Mimic, which is a 0/0 shapeshifter for 4, a green, and a blue that can enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. But at the beginning of his upkeep, it creates a token that if this creature is in a token, it creates a top token that's a copy of this creature. He will then use it to copy Reclamation Sage to destroy my No Mercy, which is a very powerful play for him, and that will prevent Athreos from becoming a creature. We're going to see him minus Garruk to create a 3/3 beast. Very interesting choice for him here. He will then proceed to his end step and then get a Glowing Rock Rites of Itlimoc flip over to Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun, as he does have more than 4 creatures now. Passing turn back to himself. Thassa, God of the Sea, and Reclamation Sage will trigger. Mr. Fridge will scry 1 and choose to put a card on the bottom of his library, meaning that we are going to know that it's not a card he favors very greatly. Reclamation Sage choosing to target Athreos, although it won't be destroyed due to being indestructible. We're then going to see him play an island as his land for turn, which will trigger Tatio Benthic Druid, gaining him a life and drawing him a card, which, considering he only has 2 cards in his hand, is very good. He will then create another 3/3 beast creature token, which he's just doing to get any sort of extra damage he can now. He will then make what I presume to be all of his creatures unblockable. He's going to choose his Summoning Sick Beast, oddly enough. He is going to proceed to combat and swing at me with Tatio Benthic Druid, which is a 3/3 unblockable commander now that I will have to take. going from 40 down to 37 life with 3 commander damage. He will also swing at me with the Reclamation Sage and the Beast token as well as the Progenitor Mimic Reclamation Sage. I will simply take it all, going from 40 life down to 35, 8, going down to 30 with 3 commander damage. And we are going to see him hopefully finally pass turn back to me here. And I will draw it into a Divinity of Pride, which is unfortunately not going to do the trick for me here, as I don't have another land. Meaning we're simply going to have to pass the turn. No, I mean, I guess technically we can swing out. So we will swing out at Garak Wildspeaker with our 4 Shadowborn Apostles. He is going to block 2 of them with a Reclamation Sage and a Beast token, as well as his Birds of Paradise. So his Birds of Paradise will die, and his Reclamation Sage token will die. 2 of my Shadowborn Apostles will die. Garak will take 1 damage, going from 2 loyalty down to 1. I will get 2 Athreos God of Passage triggers. Both of them targeting Mr. Fridge. We're going to see him pay 3 life, going from 27 down to 24. And 24 down to 21. We'll see him pass turn and get a trigger off of his Reclamation Sage that is a hidden Progenitor Mimic. His Thassa will allow him to scry 1. He'll put a card on the bottom of his library, so what we gather from that is it's not a good card that he really wanted. He will create a Reclamation Sage, and he will get a trigger off of it, choosing to target Athreos to no avail, as it is indestructible. Nothing will happen to it. We're going to see him play a land for turn, which will allow him to gain life and draw a card off Tatyova, going up from 21 to 22 life. We'll see him cast a Tribute Mage, which is a 2/2 human wizard for 2 and a blue, and when it enters the battlefield, he can search his library for an artifact card with a CMC of 2, reveal it, put it into his hand, and shuffle his library. Then I'm going to see him cast Illusionist Bracers, which is an artifact equipment for 2 generic mana. He can equip for 3, and whenever an ability of an equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, he can copy that ability and choose new targets for the copy. It does specifically say activated, so I'm not sure if that means he can actually choose to... I'm not sure if that means he can actually copy triggered abilities. He will +1 Garak, untapping 2 target lands. The art that is going to be the artifact he reveals. He will cast an Elvish Mystic, which is a 1/1 Elf Druid for a single green mana that he can tap to add a green to his mana pool. And he'll presumably just swing out at me. getting in damage where he can. Nope, he's just going to pass turn to me, and I'm going to draw into Erebos Bleak-Hearted, which is, I guess, something I'll go ahead and cast, just because it's something I can do. Which is a 5/6 legendary enchantment creature god for 3 and a black. It has indestructible. It is not counted as a creature unless my devotion to black is 4 or less. And whenever another creature I control dies, I may pay 2 life to draw a card, and I can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice another creature to give target creature -2/-1 until end of turn. I'm going to then have both of my Shadowborn Apostles attack Garruk Wildspeaker. And both will be blocked by beast tokens. Meaning both my Shadowborn Apostles will die. And I'll get 2 Athreos triggers, pointing them both at Mr. Fridge. I'll also get 2 Erebos triggers. I will pay 2 life from Erebos, going from 30 down to 28. And I will do it again, going from 28 down to 26 to draw 2 cards. I will draw into a Plains, which is something I was wanting to see. And I'll also draw into a Shadowborn Apostle. We are going to see Mr. Fridge pay for one of the Shadowborn Apostles, going from 22 down to 19. He will also pay for the second one, going from 19 down to 16. Going to my second main phase, I will play a Plains as my land for turn, and then I will pass the turn after that. We're then going to see him scry one with Thassa and choose to put it onto the bottom of his library. He will somehow get another Reclamation Sage, which will destroy my Erebos. But that's which is indestructible, so that's completely fine. We'll see him cast a Kodama's Reach again, which is again fine because he has basically infinite mana at this point anyway, effectively. He'll then play a land for turn. He'll then draw 2 cards and gain 2 life, going from 16 to 17, 17 to 18. And he is just going to concede the game. So we will win the game. We'll go ahead and draw a card here. See what our next draw was. It was a Gourmand. We will reveal our hand. Good game, sir. And with that, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video, and as well as showing me all the support you have. I've been your host, Cardmaster Phoenix, signing out. See you guys next time. Have a good one. Stay tuned. I will be profiling this deck very, very soon. That being said, thank you all again for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Wonder why he conceded.